Hey, how's it going? Design Elements and Principles, session 13, part A. How's everybody doing today? Hope you made it through. I did not. That weird, I forget what they call it, a wave front or something weird that hit yesterday. So I didn't have power starting at 1:30 and lasting until I left today. This is the first power I've had. Getting here at 8 in the morning. It's not supposed to be back on. So 24 hours without power. I know there's worse things. I kept reminding my family it's like camping. But oddly, and then I just looked at something because I was working on a project and it didn't save at all. I thought it was saving along the way. So now I have to check my histories and see if I can get some of the info back. All right. Enough about me. I hope everybody's doing well. I understand these situations come up. I would have jumped and gone somewhere had it happened earlier, but I had to do stuff. I had to get my kid and stuff. So that messed up everything. But let's get talking about design. Start at temp 1. Of course, we do our attendance. We hit continue. What is the role of hyphens in body copy? To link break words properly across lines. So that's what hyphens do in body copy. But because they link breaked words properly across lines, we actually don't even want to break words. So D is the answer. D is good to know what hyphens are, but I'm a huge, absolutely huge proponent of never using them, especially in the type of design that 95% of all designers do, which isn't books. If you're graphic designer and you're doing magazines, you're doing publication design. I'll just simplify that. If you do publication design, fine, hyphens all over the place. But if you're doing small works, never hyphen. You don't need it. You work around it. Broken, where z, h, ard, t, u, ru, ed. So it's like reading like that. So it's not worth doing it. Today we're going to talk about proportion. We always have the mid-session project review available for you. This is session 13 out of 16, just so you know. After this week, there's 14, 15, and 16. 16 is the week that everything is due. Final projects are due. So we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. Of course, today's assignments will be a research and project, and we're going to talk about proportion today. So let's talk about proportion in graphic design. Let's start there. Getting ahead of myself. So before we get started. All right. Let's do this. All right. Let's zoom in, talk about proportion. Proportion is pretty simple. It's the scale of things, and that's today's Thursday's reading is on scale, which is basically the same thing. So let's get going. Proportion, fundamental principle of design that involves harmonious relationship and balance of elements in terms of size, quantity, and scale. So that's what we're dealing with. Now, I think we talk about it, aspect ratio. We'll talk about it more than once in this. But proportion, we have scale, we have size, we have proportion, which all may mean different things. And when we talk about like the size of something, we say, like I need a 1 by 1 inch square, 1 x 1, and then I would draw a 1 inch by 1 inch square. And that's like we call the size of something. Then we want to scale it. And if I say, make it 25% bigger, right? So that is what we are doing is we are multiplying this equation by 0.25. So this then makes that scale, we're scaling it, and it makes it 1.25 by 1.25. So we have the size. Somebody tells you a size. Somebody tells you scale it up by a certain amount. The size is right now, but we want it twice as big. So that's times 2, which would be, 1 by 1 would be 2 by 2. We deal with this a lot in design, okay? There's always something. Now, the harder one is proportion. In proportion, and I would say that's aspect ratio. And it's harder when we deal with something that's like, and this is really off. This is, let's say that's 2 by 1. Now, if you say make that twice as big, well, I go to 2 by 4. So I'm multiplying by 2, right? But when we get into ideas of like a posters is let me get some room here, or just undo all this. The poster is 20 by 30. But let's say you don't want to work in that 20 by 30. The aspect ratio doesn't always go direct, or 24 by 36. Like it doesn't always go correct. And so that's proportion. So if you're like half this, that'd be 10 by 15. I'm trying to think of a harder one that I usually deal with. I think it's like 24 by 36. And it's like, make it 10% bigger. And then you're like sitting there trying to futz and figure out the math. But, not every size fits in every size. So we call it proportioning. And we used to have a thing called a proportion wheel that would help you figure that out. So if I had an image that was, say, 5 by 6, and I needed to fit in an odd area like 8, like the 5 needed to fit 8. Well, what does the 6 need to be? You just don't add 3 to this. It's not 9. So that's where it gets really confusing, is when you have a size and somebody says, we like it, but we want that size to be now this. And you're like, okay, but then in proportion, 6 doesn't become 9. It's just not adding 3. You have to find out what that percentage is and then update it. It is difficult. That's why computers these days are so much nicer, that you can just grab a proportion size, hold down scale, and then make it to the size that they want. So you don't have to deal with that. Let's see if I can get one. This is the thing I used to have to do. So you would find out, like, you would do size of the original. And if I did an illustration at 5 inches, and then that illustration needed to be about 6.5 inches. So I go like size of the original to the reproduction size. That means that the scale of it is like 132%. So like you could figure all that out. And then so like, what did you have to move this wheel. So I can't move it, but that's what you do. And then it gives you everything you need to do. But I remember learning that thing and it was crazy. And I had to learn how to use it. And I carried one around with me because we used it. I want to say we used it like every day. It was very weird. Like now that I think about it, how easy it is. Like, but I used that thing every day. It was always like something like, what's the proportion of it? So, and that's the thing. So the big one is, I guess maybe for intro designers, that if you get a scale of something wrong, so say somebody asks for it and they say 20 by 30 and it was supposed to be 24 by 36. This will not fit in there correctly. You're going to end up with like a bigger gap on one side than the other. So just stuff to know about when it comes to that kind of stuff. The other one I'm huge on, hold down shift, no matter what the size. Holding down shift constrains that proportion and make sure you're not distorting anything. So shift. in everything but Photoshop. And I don't really count Photoshop. Photoshop's a whole different beast. Photoshop is for, photos. I don't really design in Photoshop. I do adjustments. I do fancy fancy things in Photoshop, but I don't use Photoshop as a design platform ever. That's me personally. I do know some people that do use Photoshop as a design platform. But I feel like usually even for them, it's the final, like it's used in a different way. But Photoshop's the only one where you don't hold shift. Otherwise, no matter what you are doing, no matter what program, make sure you just hold down shift and you maintain that aspect ratio and that size. So keep that in mind. It's all very important. Let me just delete that. Now the golden ratio is good to know. I'll talk more about it here. We have one that's got the golden ratio, but it's a natural mathematical ratio that is seen in nature, and it's like how the flowers are made. I don't know if you've seen stuff where like you see a flower and it's got little petals on the inside, and then the next size petals, and then the bigger petals, and then like the biggest petals. Like think of a sunflower, and if you look at that, there's a swirl there's actually like a swirl, and if you do the math, it comes out to like the golden ratio. And it's a great way. You could start with a rectangle and you break it down in the individual parts over and over and over, and it scales to show you this is first, second, third. Like it gives you quadrants of the most important in each area. Visually looks great. It's really cool. It has been around for centuries, as it says. I don't want to tell you that I have ever like started to design and went, I'm going with the golden ratio. But if you look up some logo designs and people taking apart like famous logos, they will put the golden ratio all over it. And it's like a little bit Apple logo breakdown. And it gets a little bit crazy. Does this show it? It's like one of the, it gets into this kind of stuff where people are like, all this like figuring out the math. And it's like, oh my God, did somebody actually even do that? Like sometimes it comes down to people do this kind of, here, this is maybe for getting a construction. I don't know. It gets to be a little bit much when people like really get into it and like, oh, and then I see the ratio here and the ratio there. See, oh, here it is in the background. This is one. So they even angled it into here to make it fit. Like they really pushed it too far. Like I don't believe in that kind of stuff. Sometimes art is just art, and sometimes a logo just happens to hit home, right? So it's all a little bit weird. I don't use it, but you can see it in good art and good design. Sometimes it's just kind of like, oh, there it is. Hierarchy of scale. All right. This is a big one. This is hierarchy. This is, what are you telling me? What's most important? When do I need to know about it? How do I need to know about it? And a lot of this will depend on that, the visual weight as well. All right. So if I have a message, hello, and then it's, how are you? I'm trying to write, I'm fine. Order of importance, the greeting, hello. Second order, how are you? Third one, I'm fine. So hierarchy of scale. What we want people to see, we show them by making it bigger, right? The biggest is always most important. But if you do, hello, how are you? I'm fine. It's very robotic. Nobody knows like what's important, what's the most important, what's least important. It just becomes one giant thing. So we use hierarchy. And this again, I always talk about, look, this right here. It's bigger and bolder than this. I want you to know about this before you know about this. So it helps you go through the process. So the hierarchy scale. So we think about that when we're doing our posters and when we're doing our designer pamphlets. What's most important? What's second important? What's third important? You have five, like 5 items to put in each one of those things, approximately. So, well, the logo for the festival should be most important. They should know when it is. So maybe the date is second important. Third most is probably who's playing there, right? Then fourth important is the images of the event, and least important is that paragraph. It needs to be there. We need to tell people about it, but I want to get people's attention first by seeing the logo, second by knowing when can I go, third by who's playing, because that may just intrigue me before even the name. Like if I see, such and such is playing Jelly Roll, and I'm a Jelly Roll fan, and I see a poster with Jelly Roll's name on it, I'll be like, oh gosh, the Jelly Roll is playing at this event on this day. Like in order of importance. So the festival is first, the date is probably second, though it doesn't have to be blasting in your face for the date. People usually look for that. And then the headliners, and everything else is beyond that. So hierarchy of scale and all that. So that's how we think about it. Visual weight. This is, so visual weight is this. So again, I have more weight on this than I do here for the proportion. Larger, more prominent elements may carry more visual weight, while smaller, less will carry visual. So there's weird like optical illusions that may happen too, where a circle or a square, and if they're both like the volume, if say the volume of the circle is the same as the volume of the square, blah, blah, blah. But one actually may look visually bigger than the other just by the way it looks. Actually, when we draw and we have circles and squares, if you were to draw, let's see if I can do it. I don't know if it does it. I don't know, with a straighter line. So if I drew a square in here, sorry about that. That was dumb. But and say that's a letter, and I draw an O. Oh, geez. Just so like the O always pops up and below the square letters. So if I was like to go across and draw a very line, you'd see this E would go up and above, like this would go up, like curved letters go below the line because proportionate visual weight makes them look better. It's weird. I think you learned that. Hopefully you learned that in typography. All right. Aspect ratio. That's what I was talking about. And actually, you know what? Maybe I will do this because we have a second. Because I don't talk as much about the other assignments. So I'm going to do a poster. I got a 24 by 36 inch poster. Right? Right. Now I'm going to draw a box that's 30 by 20 by 30. Now you're like, oh, okay. And I'm going to put it down in that corner, right? So it's perfectly in the corner. Oh, I need to make that 24 by 36. And I'm going to hold down shift. Oh, it fits. 20 by 30 is 30. I'm a magician. What the heck? Let's do 18 by 24. Am I just picking all the aspect ratios that I have memorized? This is hilarious. No, this one's off. Oh, I guess 24, it's a 2 and a 3. That's why. So 18 by 24 doesn't fit. It leaves that gap. I love that I screwed up the first one. But see, like there's that gap there. So, and I'm holding down shift when I do this. So you always have to make sure your aspect ratio is correct. It's basically just follow the rules that are given to you. And when I say rules, instructions, you're going to get them from every place. They're going to say, we need the piece to be this by this. And if you decide to work in a different size to not the original size, you just have to make sure your aspect ratio is 100% correct, including bleed and including everything. It's just something you learn over time and it becomes natural. I think that 24 by 36 to 20 by 30 happened to just be something I do often enough that I know that they're the same and I forget. I don't know. Let's talk about spatial relationships. Extends to the spatial relationships between elements. Proper spacing. This is the proper spacing between items. Blah, blah, blah. I have some text. And I have an image that goes with the text. I am not going to put the image touching the text. I'm not going to put the image super close to the text. What I'm going to do is give it some space. Give it a spatial relationship here. We call it margins. Sometimes we call it margins. I don't know what you call it. I call it design personal space. I want you to think of every time you place something and you have a title and it's album, and then you put the album touching it. I want you to say, album is your face. This is somebody else's face. And they're talking to you after they had coffee and fish. And they came up and they talked really close to your face. So there's no personal space there. You want to create a gap. You want to create a spatial relationship between your items, between your design elements. So they're not touching, they're not interfering, they're not creating tension. Everything should have a space. We talk, this is spatial relationship. This is a good amount of space. It doesn't have to be a lot, but it shouldn't be looking like it's one word, a run-on sentence. So it's very, very important. Very important. Cropping and framing. Cropping, this is one that I want you to think about for the proportion project. And it is, you can, if I draw a house, and I frame it like this. Oh, I'll put in the lawn, the house, in the tree, in the window, in another creepy window. All right, there. That's that's what it is. We see it, we look at it. Now, I'm going to reframe it. Oh, there we go. So if I reframe it, it's the same house, it's the same everything, but now the house is huge. And we don't see all the tree. We just see the house. And we're like, whoa, something's up with that house. Like you change, I know you're seeing it with all the words behind it, but like if the picture is just of a zoomed in house, we're like, oh my God, it's all about the house, right? It's all about the house. But if I do the same house and I include some of the background and the sky, you're like, oh, what a nice little landscape. So cropping and framing can change the way you view a picture. You can have a picture of 1,000 people. But if you zoom in on one, it becomes about the person and not the people. So we have to think about how we crop and frame things. Who are we cutting out? Oh, we've all done that one, haven't we? We've all done that one. I know. I mean, this is the one. This is the one I used to love seeing. Okay, this is my little. Oh, it's my picture. I'm out with friends. Wait, I gotta undo that. And then, and then my friend is here. Let me get their hand is on my shoulder. But when I posted it, I post only this because I'm not friends with that person anymore. They're out of my life. Yeah, in my picture, I have a weird shoulder and a hand on my other shoulder. Like we can't tell that like somebody is missing. And that's framing. Like, like you're like, I'm gonna take them out of the picture. We can all tell that there was a picture with two people. That your reframing of that image to remove somebody didn't work as well as you thought. All right. The final one we're going to talk about before we go to the examples. Who thought I could talk this long about this stuff, hey? But geez. Architectural proportion. We talk about this here. We're talking about like there's a proportion that we use, and there's ADA, which is American Disabilities Act, Americans with Disabilities Act, which means that we have to do certain things in certain proportions so everybody can fit through, which is normal, right? Okay, which is normal. Doors are just a little wider than they used to be, but we design stuff in proportion, not just for our bodies, but for looks as well. And now this is getting bigger because we are actually doing graphic design into buildings now. We are designing full walls, full rooms with words and text and creating landscapes. Think of every museum now. When you go to a museum, think of more of like the Science Museum, like Discovery or something like that. We have big things on the walls, like enter here, and they're like crazy stuff. That's all designed in proportion to the building. I was lucky enough to do that kind of work too. And it's fun. Designing an entire like inside of something is so much fun where you're doing the walls and you think this word's going to look like this and colors and all that kind of stuff. And we have to work with the architectural proportion as well. How is it going to look? Is it going to look too big? Is it going to look too small? How do we, relay that back and forth? That was in some of that building stuff in the last reading about not grids, the one before grid. Well, I just took out grid in the assignment. Oh my God, why am I blanking on that? You know what I'm talking about. Last week's reading. So there we go. Let's look at some of this. Proportion. What do we need to know? This is kind of like go about this. What do we need to know about what's going on? Well, we need to know that there's a huge multifamily garage sale. So like, even though the way it reads, they want to know that it's huge, and we want to know that it's a garage sale. Multifamily, not as big, maybe not as important. It just throwing it in there. So you just don't go to one house. You know what I'm saying? We want to make sure that we know it's multifamily. We want to know that it's huge. We got this arrow pointing down, and we got this arrow pointing up, and it's telling us what's going on. Wonderful stuff. Easy, understandable. We got it. I'm just always like, reading all the stuff that they're selling. It's very funny. So proportion matters. If it was just like, huge multi-family garage sale. 5, 2, 4, 7, 10, and it was just all right there. You wouldn't look at it like you do now. Like we're here to look at the whole thing, like we're here like, whoa, check it out. There's a huge garage sale. So proportion does matter. We want to signify certain things. We want to engage people in different ways. Look at this kick-ass little old school poster. Think of this one for our proportion project. All right. This is somewhat of a reverse proportion. She's not a giant lady, but they put her in front. We get the camera close to her. She's huge. She's the main event. And then she's framing out all these guys fighting in the background, right? It's the way we frame it. It's the way we use proportion. It's the way we use, I love this, that we framed in like these three getting, beat up between her arm and her knee. It's the way we're framing stuff. Look at this. These two guys fighting in between these guys. Like everything is framed. Everything's proportional to fit. These guys are bigger than these guys, so these guys can frame in there. She's a perfect size. These are biggest, middle, smallest, and of course she's the largest. 7 Savage Punks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 9 people fighting though. But so this is done in a way. If she was just like crawling on the ground and we just saw that normal, and she was like in proportion would be like this. And then this was the poster, that'd be dumb. You know what I mean? It wouldn't work. It would be like, there's no thought about it. Here we have it though. We're like, what's going on? What is she doing? Oh, look at these guys fighting. And then, and this is all subliminal. All this other stuff nobody needs to know about. Nobody sees that, but they kind of absorb it and they don't know what they know. Does that make sense? Like there's so many things in graphic design, you can hide that stuff. What do I know? How can I make it known like that, what they know, and I want them to know subliminally? It gets a little bit crazy. Here's that golden ratio. The golden ratio. You can see they pushed it, but it works. They added a little up here, but like the main event is here. So the main event is what she's wearing, right? The second main event, the color, the size, the price, and the bag, right? Okay, so that's all in there. Then it's share, play, save. So it does work. It is the ratio, and it looks nice in the end. I got no problems with this. It's a nice looking piece. And this is on your phone, and so everything is where it needs to be. I think if I'm using my phone, it's like nice and easy to get to. And so in this way, I'm going to predict that if you were to ask the designer if they use the golden ratio, they would say the golden who now? Because it's not thought about. But we go through it, and when we're designing, we just naturally think, okay, how much space can she be? How much space okay. Now the client we need to be able to have a color. We need the size, and the size needs this. And then we need the description and the price. Okay, we'll do this. And then all this is secondary, right? All this is secondary, but it still needs to be there. But this is more important. And that's the stuff we think about. We think what's most important, what's second important, what's third important. And that's always something that you should think about. And then that comes in, you can use the golden ratio. Just trying to think like logo, date, head 1, head 2, head 3, paragraph, 3 images. Without those lines. I don't know. That may work for if you use the golden ratio. Proportion, scale, sizing. Here's one. Here's one to make you feel inadequate. Look at this house on a mountain. They just want these people living the life. Look at that. This is what they want you to look at. And then over here, Colin Hughes, blah, 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 blah. I mean, this is like one of those things, like when you look at it and they're like, if you have a question about it, you can't afford it. Don't even look at it. It's not for you. But like they do this in this, like here. I mean, this is over half the size of the page. I bet you if I was to rotate that and then we do the golden ratio and it's like, like, and then what are they? We're so cool. Just this entire space, no information at all. So, this is golden ratio, and then the scale, we're talking like scale and proportion here. What we need to know and what's least important, but if you need to know it, we can make it small, because if you want to know about it, you will look for that information. You only get this catalog if you're a certain person. And here, this one. This is a weird one in so many different ways, in ratio, in what the understanding of what's going on, proportion. This one's all over the place. So we have this base, and the base reminds me of like cars driving on a freeway. You know what I mean? So is it like below us? Like what's on the ground doing that? All right. Then we have the people. And this is like fire clouds or something like that, with more here. And they got a halo around them. But then they're in a valley. Okay. And there's our proportion. But the valley is what? On top of a city? And I'm just showing you this. Like, I kind of love it and I hate it. Like, and then here. See that little moon? But it's below the clouds? Is that a spaceship? The moon? What is it? Where is it? Where's it coming? Where's it going? So it's like very hard to understand. It's like somebody had an idea, or they're combining too many things and the ratio wasn't working. Yeah, like if these weren't here and it just went from this to like this sky and you took out these clouds, I think it would work. I think it'd be much better. So crazy. All right, let's talk about those assignments you got to do. The first two, proportion. And again, I'm not going to go over this as we get further in. You know what to do. I'm checking everything though, making sure that you have your proportions correct, that your space between elements is exactly the same, and that you're using the centering and all that stuff. This one is done in Illustrator. You've done at least 4, I think, in Illustrator. And all the instructions are right there. All right, you know what to do. Now for the project, I'll open up this one. This one's simple. You only got to do 3. And it's reverse proportion. So there's only 3. And you say, Joel, what do you mean by reverse proportion? And I say, friends, let's play around and make the obvious thing bigger than the less obvious thing. I don't want these open in front of you. I've got some examples, but This is a little goofy, right? Giant bee, small flower, big clock, little bed, tiny fish, giant hook. You know, it should be a giant or hook. It should be big. But you get the idea. Reverse proportion. This one cracked me up. I think it's a giant turtle in the mountain. So like you get the scale, like, oh, this thing is huge compared to that mountain. Here, big alien, tiny, you know, like it's almost like the reverse of the alien. And then a rain cloud with giant drops. It's good, 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 good. Good, not great. We got this one. Little surfer, big wave. Hands, small world. Giant stars, small planet. So those are some fun ones. Well, this person did pro portion. Though the P should be there. So it should be pro portion. So have some fun with this one. Play around, do some goofy stuff. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. So that's it for today. I'll meet you again on Thursday. We'll talk about the I got to put it in there. It's missing. Pamphlet design. Why is it not showing up? Well, that's something for me to check right now. So we'll talk about the pamphlet design. And yeah, there we are. All right. Hope everything's good. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please let me know. There's plenty of ways to ask me. I'm always around. Please just ask. Don't be shy. And with that said, talk to you later. All right. Bye-bye.